Today we got a special guest, a young lady who's been a manager, a pro wrestler, a model. Her name is Paisley, and today she's going to teach us why Paisley knows best. Paisley, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. Pleasure to get you on here and talk to you. And we like to start at the beginning usually. I like to ask, were you a fan of wrestling growing up, or did you kind of fall into this?
So I wasn't a fan when I was growing up. I actually didn't really know much about it. It wasn't until I had kids when they got really into it, and I decided one night, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to buy tickets. We're going to go to a show. And that's kind of when I got into it. I was like, we went there, and I said, you know what? This is something I can do. Kind of caught the ear of the right person, I guess, and it kind of just happened from there.
So timing, a lot of times, as we find out in life, is helpful.
Yes.
Where did you end up training, and how did that come about?
I was talking, when I was there, I had caught the ear of one of the guys who was working security. He actually had his own academy. So he had me go out and start with them. And he was just like, hey, why don't you come out on Sunday? And let's see, if you can do anything, what you've got. And then, I mean, it just kind of, I just went, decided, I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Have there been some other people along the way that have helped you out on this journey?
As far as helping me out, honestly, everybody that I have talked to, even if it was just a short little, Instagram message, or if it's actually people that I'm training with, everybody's helped me in some way or another. Right now, I currently train under former Impact wrestler Hang Time, so he's a huge help, obviously, teaching me all my in-ring training. And then I have a lot of people who I do train with or I do shows with. Everybody's just so nice and willing to help me in any way they can. So I've gotten help from all over the place.
So that's good to hear. That's not the journey everybody takes, but it sounds like you've had a lot of positive people around you, so that's good.
Yeah, I try to keep my ear open. That's the best way, is just to kind of be a sponge and take everything in, whether it's good or bad. Everybody has their own way of doing things. And it's just great to listen to what everybody has to say, and then just, listen, ask questions, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think, too, just to have thick skin is very helpful, too. Understand that sometimes people are trying to help you, right? Another thing I want to ask you, too, is, what have been some of the harder aspects about the wrestling game? Whether it's physical, travel, promos, what have been some of the tougher challenges for you think?
Getting into promos is hard, but a lot of it, too, is when you're actually in the show, you have to be able to read the crowd and to kind of all the psychology behind it. You have to know where the where the hard camera is. You have to know, okay, these people are really into it, so feed off of them. And, maybe go over to this side more. And you just have to really, for me, pay attention to every little thing that's going on. Yeah, so I would say that's probably the most challenging part, is just being, hyper aware of everything going on.
Right. The timing of when to do it. Well, you know what to do, but, almost when to do it, right?
Exactly, because you have to make sure that it looks good, from, all different angles. Because if you look at it, there's somebody on every side of the ring. And you have to make sure, if I'm doing something on one side, that it's still going to look good on another side, too. So everybody's getting the best possible show.
That's very good. I saw you're a model, too. Are there any other interests you're working on currently?
Not currently. I'm just kind of learning as much as I can about everything. Working as hard as I can, but wrestling right now is huge. Learning how to do the managing, learning how to do promos. That's really, really what I'm focusing on right now.
Do you have a preference, whether it's wrestling in the ring or being a manager?
I actually really like being a manager. I really, really do like it. I think I love working in wrestling too, but it's a whole different dynamic being a manager. You really get to be right up there with the crowd the whole time, but you also get to be, right by ringside too, and kind of almost in both worlds. And then you do kind of get to get in the ring too, not necessarily wrestling, but you can get in the ring to, talk or maybe distract the ref, stuff like that. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
When you're a manager, I'm just curious, do you feel like you're more part of almost like a team because you're trying to get the other wrestlers over and the match over too?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. Definitely.
Yeah. No, I can see that, and that's that's a fun thing. I think me personally, I've always enjoyed that camaraderie almost, and trying to help other people, that team sport mentality. So I get that.
We either win as a team or lose as a team.
Yeah, that's right. You have a T-shirt at Pro Wrestling Tees. Did you design that?
Yeah. Okay. So some of the T-shirts I did design myself, which is kind of awesome. Other t-shirts, my fans actually designed for me. I kind of do little contests or competitions where people will submit different ideas that they have, and they come up with all these different designs, and then we'll choose one of those, me and my team. And so it's really nice because I feel like I get to get them involved too. So my fans are always getting involved doing something, and that's a really great way for me to show them, that I do appreciate them. So I do some, and my fans do some.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, now that also too, the fans are now getting a personally vested interest in something too. So I think that's super. Like, you're really getting everybody involved there. That's awesome.
I'm trying.
It's good. It's very like almost grassroots kind of, out campaigning. I like it. What about goals? Like, do you have a goal you see yourself, or you want to see yourself in the next year, or anything in particular?
So within the next year, I do want to be wrestling more. I want to be learning, I want to take as much time as I can to learn the business as well as I can, and start implementing that inside the ring also. So really within the next year, I just want to focus on my training, getting stronger, learning a lot more of the psychology of it, and just really learning all the different things that are going to help me succeed. So maybe one day I do get to go to one of the big agencies. One
thing I've noticed I think you're really good at is promotion. Is there any particular mindset when it comes to promoting?
Yeah, no, you just gotta be in touch with everybody. And a lot of what I do is I do talk to, if you reach out and send me a message, I am gonna message you back. It might take me a little while, but that's one thing that I really strive for, because I want people to know me personally too. So the more you do that, the more people are going to interact with you, and the more they're going to, tell their friends, hey, why don't you go check out Paisley? Or to the little 10-year-old who is, so into wrestling, and oh my gosh, Paisley sent them a message, even if it's just, hey, thanks for following me. Or, if somebody needs a tip on what, to do to get stronger, to work out. I even had, when school was still in session, I had a young lady reach out to me and ask me which prom dress she thought, or she wanted me to pick for her, essentially. So it's great.
That's awesome, man. That must be kind of a mind blow a little bit, when that happened.
It went from 0 to 100 so fast, and I love every second of it.
How did you come up with Paisley Knows Best? Who was involved in that process, and how did that work?
That was just kind of my kids, actually. Okay. They kind of came up with it. It's kind of one of those mom knows everything type thing. And the 13-year-old looked at me one day and was just like, what about Paisley Knows Best? That sounds great. And I was like, yeah, I like that. Let's go with it. Let's run with it.
Tell people where they can find you and anything else you might want to promote right now.
Awesome. So you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, at Paisley Knows Best. I keep up with all my fans and everybody there. And it has all my information for where you can contact me, who you can talk to. I have lots of stuff in the works right now. So just keep up with my pages, give me a like, give me a follow, and you'll be able to be involved in Paisley's life.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we'll tweet all that stuff out too when this interview comes out. Thank you for your time.
Well, I'm a working man here for working fans, and I'm going to tell you what is a part of the plan. With part of the plan, they first out last, it is called the Working Fan Podcast. Where they get questions and they get answers. And you can't see them, but they got answers. They are the ones in the place to be. You can see them all, and all you'll see, they got the answers, the wrestling test. And they are, yes, they got to be the best. The guy got a voice of out of this world. He be rocking the girl. So I was saying like this. They take him to task. They're listening to the Working Man Podcast.
It's the Working Fans Podcast with Dave. And today we got a former member of Men on a Mission from the WWE back in the day. He was the happy rapping manager, Oscar. How the heck are you, sir?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. Usually when I get people on, I'll ask them about how they broke into wrestling. But with you, I was kind of curious. How did you start rapping? Was that something you always loved? Or, how did that come about?
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm trying to make a long story short, because that's a loaded question with a long reach. Rap started when I was in high school. It actually started when I was in high school. It started up in the Bronx, New York, where I'm from New York, from Brooklyn. And, I became a fan right away when I first heard the first rap that I ever heard. Because before there were records, raps were on cassette. And guys used to have those big boom boxes that took 12D batteries. And they weighed about 10, 15 pounds to carry them around. A lot of people got bulked. They got bulked up just by carrying boom boxes. And you heard the likes of Curtis Lowe and Grandmaster Flash and and Spoonie G, some of the earliest rappers, and I was just a fan then. And then in Brooklyn, we used to mess around with it. I had one rhyme, back by 1979 that I used to do, and then I started rocking at parties. So we used to have block parties outside where we set these huge booming sound systems up, and we just rock it all night. And some of us that was rapping, we would get on the mic and just rock the crowd outside until the club situation came, and then the records started coming out. And I so wanted to be a rapper making records. It was my passion and my dream. Fast forward, when Grandmaster Flash and them started making records, and then Run DMC, and then they started going on tours and all that. Just fast forward in the story, that was if I had 3 wishes, it would be to go on tour, to make records and be a rap star. To go on tour, make records and be a rap star. Oh, and Genie, to go on tour, make records and be a rap star. I wanted it so bad. Not about the money. It was about prestige, the clothes, and especially number one, the girls.
Right.
And that's what everybody was really doing it for, because nobody thought that the kind of money was going to be generated out of this. We just wanted to be popular. I started rapping at this club later on, fast forward into the 80s. I started rapping at this club called Broadway International, and the guy was a Jewish guy that really liked me. His name was Leon, and he let me get on stage and introduce the act. I used to get booed off the stage every week. Get out of here! Even threw a wet roll of toilet tissue at me one time. I'd never forget.
Wow.
It's like, why you just don't quit? Why you just don't quit? Why you just don't quit? But the love of that stage outweighed the negativity until I got better. But it's not that I got better. They just, after I guess about a year, they just got tired of booing. He ain't going nowhere.
You broke them down.
He really must have let if nothing else, we ain't got to like him, but it don't make fun no more. So yeah, I went to I did the Broadway International thing, and then what I did was I went for the New York rap scene was really crowded. But my parents moved to California. I went to California where the rap scene wasn't so crowded. And my skill level to rap was nothing in New York, but it was phenomenal in Los Angeles because it was just breaking out.
Right.
So when you hear the names Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Eazy-E, Ice-T, I was all in that West Coast rap clique back then, where we used to do parties and all that other kind of stuff like that. Everybody branched off, and then what wound up happening was I had rap. I used to freestyle all the time. I could rap about anything on the spot. And I met a man named Norby Walters. Man changed my life. Norby Walters was an agent to every black group that there was that was doing anything. The Stylistics, the Barry Whites, the Michael Jacksons, and he was their agent. And as he was coming to retirement, he took a liking to me, and then he became my manager. That was the best thing that happened because the position that he had, Norby Walters was like the unofficial mayor of Los Angeles, mayor of Hollywood, to be more specific. The man knew every actor, every producer, every celebrity and power broker in the entertainment business. How could you not fail being aligned with somebody like that? And when I met him, I started doing everything. I was playing casinos out in Vegas. I was on the flip side. I wasn't doing the stuff Run DMC and Grandmaster Flash was doing. I was doing corporate parties and Jewish events and stuff where rappers don't normally go, where white folks be at. And making a huge amount of money, and I was becoming an overnight celebrity in Los Angeles because I was always getting written up by Variety magazine, The Hollywood Reporter, and it was a glorious time.
Wow.
Doing all that.
What time period was this? 80s, 90s?
It was from the mid-'80s, and then the year where I really broke out was 1990. Because in 1990, the very first big project that I did was the Jetsons had a movie, and I got on the soundtrack. If you ever watch Jetsons the movie, one of the very last songs was called the Jetson Rap. That's what I did, and I mean, I was excited. To this day, that's what I'm still proud of. I mean, that's the iconic Jetsons.
Right.
I did a rap for the Jetsons the movie, and that was fantastic.
That's something to live forever, right there. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it will. Matter of fact, my wife was watching it about a month ago. I mean, it's a phenomenal thing to put on. You know, if I ever write up my legacy on paper, that's a one big pinnacle. Then from then on, I'm getting to the part where I got the WWE. Then I'm gonna let you ask your next question.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead. Yeah, keep going. You're doing great.
After the Jetsons, this producer that I knew in Seattle, he had a production company where he would do like Vegas type shows with dancing girls and comedians, variety shows. And I knew him. His name was Greg Thompson. He was another mentor of mine. After I did the Jetsons, he said, "You know what? You got the Jetsons out. That's a big thing. I got a show running in Bermuda. Bermuda. Beautiful Bermuda, where it ain't nothing but a beach. I mean, it's 7-star hotels. And he was running a show at a 7-star hotel for the Southampton Princess. And he gave me a contract, flew me out there, and I was working in that show. So I lived in Bermuda for close to a year. I came back, and I settled right back into doing big things in Hollywood. I was rapping, opening things up at the Improv for guys like Adam Sandler and Jay Leno and Jerry Seinfeld and big comedy names. Some of the biggest comedy names ever. I probably opened up for them at the Improv or some other charity event or something else. I mean, it was phenomenal. I hooked up with my favorite comedian, who was the biggest comic in America at that time, Andrew Dice Clay. I saw him outside the Comedy Store, and I did this rap for him, and he asked me, "How the F did you do that?" I said, "I don't know." So he had 8 shows running at the Laugh Factory, which was on Sunset Boulevard. What he did was he would do his show, he would call me on stage, and then I would rap the show out down, and everybody lost their mind. And then it was, I was like, oh my God, I'm with Andrew Dice Clay. I'm with Andrew Dice Clay.
That's you got a crazy life, my man.
I'm eating pizza with Andrew Dice Clay, and I'm getting ready to go on stage with Andrew Dice Clay. This is nuts. I went with Andrew Dice Clay to Las Vegas. He played at Valley. Did the same thing. I was a huge fan when I went to Vegas and playing craps. So the Caesars Palace playing craps. On the same day, coincidentally, that Vince McMahon and Macho Man Randy Savage and them were there, they were shooting vignettes. So WrestleMania 9 was coming up in 2 weeks. So I'm playing craps, and I see this big commotion in the casino, and I look, and I see this guy with this crazy hat and his colorful outfit. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Macho Man Randy Savage. I gave the dice to the guy next to me, and I said, go rap for Randy Savage real fast. So I said, Mr. Savage, I got a singing telegram for you. He went, okay, go ahead, brother. And then I did the rap, and I put Vince. I was like, no, Macho Man, no other wrestler, he can't ravage. Talk about Macho Man, Randy Savage, and then goes the man with the plan. Standing right there is Vince McMahon. And just on and on and on.
That's awesome.
Vince was like, his mouth was open. He was like, I want you to call me Monday at the WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. He said it as the elevator was closing, and he said it just like Stamford, Connecticut, just like you can't say it on TV. So that Monday, I woke up, I was like, okay, let's see, go get candles for the ladies. I gotta get milk, do some laundry, and oh yeah, that's right. Talk to the man, right. So I called. Now, when I'm calling, I'm thinking, you know how people say call me, and they don't mean it. They just say,
Yeah.
His secretary at the time was like, oh my God, yeah, this is exciting. He's been telling everybody about you. He's waiting for you to call. He's going to call you right back. He called me 10 minutes later on the plane.
Wow.
He said, I think that you would fit in here as a good manager. I see you as one of my managers. let me get WrestleMania 9 behind me, and we gonna sort this out. And I was like, you mind if I get a couple of tickets to WrestleMania 9? He was like, yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So I went back to Vegas, and yep, I had tickets ready for me at WrestleMania 9. So I'm going up. They was like, no, your seats are down here. My seats was in this red carpeted VIP section, and they sat me down next to Luther Vandross. What was the lady? I actually remember her name. Unforgettable.
Oh.
Historian. I should remember the name. It comes to me. So anyway, yeah, so I enjoyed WrestleMania 9, went home, and about a month later, he called me, flew me to Stamford, Connecticut for a meeting. Mo and Mabel were there, and that's the rest of history.
So that was the first time you met Mo and Mabel. Okay.
Yeah, see, Vince didn't know at the time who he was going to put me with. I mean, I knew it was going to be somebody black because that made sense. I don't know if it was going to be Mr. Steve or somebody like that, but they took the time to wait. They had tape on Mo and Mabel from the USWA
Right.
in Memphis, and yeah, he got them out there, put us together, and Vince and Creative had already came up with the game plan already. They knew the kind of outfits they wanted us to wear. They had the name Minimum Mission, and they told us we were going to be Mabel, Oscar, and Mo.
So you start right at WWE, but were you always a fan of wrestling?
That's another story.
Okay.
My stepfather had a knack of knowing on television what me and my brother would enjoy if he was watching it. So, like one time he would call us in and sit us down and say, look at this. And it was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, we love this. So one Saturday night at midnight, he called us in and sat us down, and wrestling was on. And that's when we all fell in love with wrestling. Bruno Sammartino and the Iron Sheik, Scandal Akbar and Andre the Giant, and the list goes on, and Bob Backlund, and we just fell in love with it. And then a couple of times he took us to Madison Square Garden to go see it live, and we had so much. We had nosebleed seats, but it was so much fun. Now, let me tell you why this is pinnacle, and now I'm going to bring in my best Howard Finkel story.
All right.
Howard Finkel was the announcer at Madison Square Garden when I was 9 or 10 years old. Used to go see it live, right? You hear Howard Finkel, ladies and gentlemen, Bruno Sammartino. I'm Howard Finkel, and I never forgot his name, but that's a Finkel. That's a strange name.
Yeah.
How about years later at WrestleMania 10, Mo and Mabel were going against the Quebecers for the titles, and it just hit me that night. I'm like, I used to watch this guy from the nosebleed seats with my father and my brother, and now he's getting ready to introduce me.
That's wild.
Any wrestler, and I would imagine that story is not so unique to me because every wrestler who ever used to go and hear the OGs being announced by Howard Finkel, and then Howard Finkel announcing their name, that's got to make you feel something, because it did. Because WrestleMania 10, when I came out that curtain, I could look up at the nosebleed seats, and I would imagine my father, brother, and me looking down at me now.
Yeah, being from Brooklyn, too, and it's WrestleMania 10 at the Garden.
Yeah, I mean, and that was such a fun, because I got to do my first music video outside on location at the Garden prior to that, And I mean, it was what I wanted, becoming a rapper 20 times over. I made it like Run DMC and Grandmaster Flash and all my idols, but I made it on the flip side in another way.
Yeah.
That had me stand apart from everybody else in the rap industry. And I come to find out that I'm respected a lot from those cats for doing it. Because my idols, Melly Mel, I saw him again down the line when I was still in, and he told me, like Chuck D of Public Enemy told me they were fans. I'm like, well, it's because of y'all that I'm doing what I'm doing. Matter of fact, I owe y'all 10 cents on every dollar I ever made, because if it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't be doing this. Yeah, it's a great story when I look back on the annals of my life. I mean, it's been a wild ride.
Well, let me ask you this, because everything, doesn't all great, and obviously things aren't always easy. And I did hear now, you always hear about it from your perspective, the travel schedule back then. How was that?
Well, it's more to it than just the travel. Okay, that opens up a new line of answer.
Awesome.
The travel itself was, if anything, most people will tell you that the travel, the logistics of the travel is more exhausting and tiring than the actual work itself, because the schedule was relentless. Vince McMahon is at home in a $32 billion mansion, and he'll put you on the road 14 or what 4 days straight without no rest. And then they give you 4 days. They give you 4 days off, right? Excuse me, 4 days off. And before you could drop your bag when you get home, because I was way out on the West Coast at that time, back in California. I remember one time, before I could put my bag down, my phone rang, and they said Shawn Michaels had to go to a wedding or something like that. We need to put you guys back on the road. Our plane tickets waiting for you on the air. I mean, the trip, because you're on the road. There's 365 days a year. You're on the road probably 290 or 300 of those. Give or take.
Sure. I heard people say before that the wrestling and performing is the fun part. They pay you for the travel.
Well, yeah, no. They pay you to, like any other recording artist, band, or act on the road. You get paid basically according to what they feel like your contribution is to the people coming, the ticket sales and the money generated. So if you're a top guy like Bret Hart was at the time, Bret Hart makes 100 times more money than me. I make good money, but Bret Hart was up there. Yeah, Lex Luger, that was up there. Yeah, Yokozuna, that was champ. So they were all in the main event all the time. So yeah, the money they were making was insane.
Before I talk about leaving WWE, what about the ribs? Any funny ribs? We always heard good stories about practical jokes and stuff about them. Anything you remember?
I was the king of getting ribs. I probably hold the record. Most ribs and most vicious ribs pulled.
Ooh.
The Steiner brothers were relentless when it came. I mean, these cats duct taped me to a urinal in the bathroom. I used to, my stuff used to be on the floor all the time, and sometimes guys wanted to fight me because they didn't think that I would fight back because I wasn't a wrestler. Don't forget my 30th birthday when they held me down and spanked my ass.
Oh my God.
30 hard licks, remember that? It's just a lot, but I wasn't the only one. I mean, Lex Luger used to have like these $2,000 suits, and from what I understand, he used to come back from the match and find his suits stapled to a wall.
Wow.
When the Roderick Reigns first got the title, somebody stole the belt, and then they shit in her gym bag.
Yeah.
These guys wasn't just ribbon playing. They would do some malicious, mean, repugnant, awful stuff.
Yeah, so the ugly side of the ribs. You saw a lot of that then, huh?
Yeah. Somebody doing that in your bag. It don't get no worse than that.
Nah. Now, so you ended up leaving the wrestling. You left WWE. Take us through that. How did that come about? What made your decision to finally leave?
Well, okay. I was about burnt out. Maybe I needed about 3 months off. I could have got regenerized and came back. I was burnt out. I mean, 2 years and change, relentlessly on the road. But what came to a head was Men on a Mission was popular, a great babyface team with a lot of fans, and a really good positive gimmick. Now, throughout my early rap career, and the way I always lived my life positive. You won't never saw me drunk because I don't drink, never had. You're not gonna see me smoking. And when it comes down to youth is my passion. Stay in school, stay out of drugs, and live your life positive. And I had a great platform being on television to impart that to a whole lot more kids than if I was just plain old, just plain old Greg, which is my real name. Well, what happened was the idea came to turn Men on the Mission heel. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to take us and turn us from babyface to heel, be a heel tag team. That didn't sit well with me for a few reasons. But number one, I know Vince knows what he's doing. He's the master at it. But I really felt strongly that, okay, they're going to turn everybody heel. And Matt and Mo maybe wanted to be heels. They never wanted to be babyface. That was Impact. I thought that it was the wrong time to do that. That was my opinion. But what the thing was because of my positive stance and my positive stature, I was never going to go on television with those many people watching me and be negative. It just wasn't in me to do it, and that was the split. That's when I was, pretty much done.
After WWE, did you do anything else with wrestling, or was that it? Did you move on to something else?
I left wrestling. And I went straight into radio. I was on one of the biggest radio shows in Chicago called Mancow's Morning.
Oh yeah. No kidding. Now I saw you, I want to say in 2017, you did a rap for Something to Wrestle With, like a live show with Bruce Pritchard and Conrad.
Okay, I was in Boston doing an interview.
Yeah, that's where I saw you in Worcester. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, with a guy named Dan Marais. I was doing a TV thing, and he told me that next night that Bruce and Conrad, because I didn't know, I knew Bruce Pritchard really well. Mm-hmm. I worked, Bruce was one of the top executives up there when I was there, so I knew Bruce really well. But he said, so Dan said, Bruce was doing his show at the House of Blues tomorrow night. He said, you should come up there and, and rap, and I was going to be in town, so I was down. So I went, and I went backstage, and I saw Bruce, and Bruce knew I was coming to rap. Bruce was like, "Do you want you rapping over the show?" I was like, "Okay." So that's how that started. So from then on, I did about 10 of those. They were all a House of Blues. They were all sold out. And it was one of the biggest ways in 2017 for me to at least get my name really, really back out there.
Yeah, it was awesome. You did great, man. It was good seeing you there. It brought back a lot of memories. What are you doing anything right now? I know it's probably hard to do things right now with the damn virus out there, but,
Well, you know about COVIDCon coming up in there, right? Okay, yeah. Myself and Hurricane Shane Helms and a bunch of big names, and we're going to have, and this guy that came up with it, named Kenny Casanova, that did Kamala's book.
Okay.
They came up with an idea, since we can't really socialize right now, is to do a virtual virtual wrestling convention. The same way we do them, but we're going to do it all online. Q&As and interviews and all kinds of stuff like that, a whole bunch of activities that people can, look at safely at home, and, panels and all that stuff that you have at a convention, we're going to have it online. That's going to be May 2nd and 3rd. I think I'm on sometime on the 3rd. I just don't know what time yet, because they haven't told me what time I slotted. But Shockmaster is going to be on. Yeah, because there's a whole bunch of big names that are going to be involved. I think Barry Darsow and Barry Darsow and them are going to be involved. Yeah, it's going to be huge, and it's going to be a virtual wrestling convention, and we're all part of this, and I'm going to be on May 3rd.
Awesome. We'll promote that when the episode drops. We'll put a link or something on Twitter, too. That's great, man.
Yes, it's called COVIDCon.
COVIDCon.
If you look up COVIDCon, Wrestling Mark at COVIDCon, and it'll give you all the details.
All right, man. Is there anything else you want to promote?
No, that's good for now. I mean, I don't know. As far as getting out, everything is so iffy right now. Things are on hold. So, hopefully we can get some semblance of normalcy back. Because me personally, I've been traveling a lot. I've been a consultant for a few things, and then a lot of by all of the big signings I've been at. over the past 5 or 6 years. WrestleCon and WrestleFest and, all those kinds of things like that. You'd always come in, meet me, shake hands, swap stories, sign autographs, and all that other kind of thing like that. So, I'm looking forward to getting back to that because I enjoy traveling, when I want to travel, when I'm being home and, I want to go and out and meet people and be with people and, and vacation and all that other kind of stuff like that. Those conventions afford you to do that. And so, yeah, that's I want to get back to that.
That's awesome. That's excellent.
Thank you, man.
Oh, my God. Listen, Oscar, thank you so much. You're an awesome storyteller. You got a great personality. You're very engaging. This was a real pleasure for me. Thank you.
All right, man. It was a pleasure talking to you. You guys can contact me anytime.
All right. Have a great night, man. Thanks again.
Hey, this is Danny Moff, Ring of Honor Superstar. You're listening to the Working Fans Podcast. Don't piss me off and keep listening.
All right, everybody. It's the Working Fans Podcast with your boy Dave. And today we got a special guest, a guy who debuted back in 1999. He's worked with companies such as Jersey All Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor. He was even in the NWA TV title tournament earlier this year. This guy is one of the hardest hitters you will find in professional wrestling. The Boricua Beast, Danny Moff. Danny, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I hope I can follow that awesome introduction.
I appreciate that, man. We try our best to make everybody feel welcome here. And, one of the first things I wanted to ask about, I was thinking about this today, as a fan growing up with wrestling, I grew up big fan of the muscle guys like Hulk Hogan and the Flyers, Jimmy Snuka. That was kind of my era as a kid. And then as I grew up, I really liked guys like Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Terry Funk, technical guys. And then, I started developing more appreciation for different storylines as I got older, like Austin, Vince. What was your fandom like growing up as a kid into a teenager and then, when you broke into the business? What is stuff that you used to like to watch and stuff you like to watch now?
Basically, I loved watching anything Puerto Rico. Anything Puerto Rico, anything vintage NWA, Florida Championship Wrestling. That was, I think, where I first fell in love with wrestling. And, then being around other talents, because of my father and his line of work, he was a referee. So, then later on, I kind of fell into the era of superstar Billy Graham, Dusty Rhodes, early Hulk Hogan, heel Sergeant Slaughter, Don Morocco, stuff like that. But I was always a fan, basically, of the heel. I was just so captivated with the heel. The only babyface I was probably into as a child was Dusty Rhodes. That was probably it. But I was also a fan of the Horsemen, so whenever, Dusty, was getting beat up by the Horsemen, that was that was much CTV. But basically, my fandom era, I guess it would have to be Superstar, Billy Graham, like I said, the later Bob Backlund title run. I always cheered against Bob Backlund. I was probably the only person on my block. I think I might have gotten into a fight with a kid named PJ Ryan on my block because I was actually happy that the Iron Sheik beat him in Madison Square Garden. Yeah, so I was probably, I was definitely the only guy cheering for the Iron Sheik when that happened. I also cheered when, I think it was when Ray Stevens gave Jimmy Snuka the pile driver on the concrete. I was the only guy cheering for Ray Stevens. I was the only guy cheering for the Iron Sheik when the Iron Sheik and Sergeant Slaughter, got into that thing when they were walking down the aisle together and neither one of them moved, and then the Iron Sheik stepped on his back and crushed him. I was the only guy cheering for the Iron Sheik. I was probably the only guy cheering for Kiki Star in Puerto Rico. you know, to you know, when he would bust up Carlos and really beat up on Carlos. So basically, I was just a fan of anything that was stirring up trouble and raising him.
You know, it's interesting. You said, I wasn't even going to ask you this. I wasn't even thinking about this, but you said, you know, being a fan of like Puerto Rican wrestling. So a little background. I don't even know if I say this on the show. I'm like one of the whitest kids you'll ever meet, but my mom is Puerto Rican. And so my father was in the military. They met in somewhere when he was stationed in Puerto Rico. And early as a kid, I can tell you part of my fandom was how passionate my mom was, whether it was boxing or pro wrestling, where like my dad would have to like sometimes like shut the TV off, like, okay, Lucy, you're getting a little out of hand here. Like she was insane for whatever was going on the TV. So I was just going to say, I mean, have you wrestled in Puerto Rico ever? Because I've always heard that it was like the craziest, just passionate fan base down there.
Well, probably the happiest times of my life in a ring, you know, like just crowd-wise, was probably in Puerto Rico. You know, it's amazing. From 2001 to about 2004, I was a part of IWA Puerto Rico, run by Victor Quinones and Savio Vega. You know, Bushwhacker Luke was our contact, was our agent, our liaison, and I dealt directly with Savio, and whenever Savio brought me in, Savio was just such a fan of everything that I was doing. And he was just such a fan of my look and my style and my believability, and you know, he loved the fact that I was always moving forward as a heel, and I was very unselfish, but I would always move forward, and it was never a punch or a kick. I was always a firm believer that, you know, in Puerto Rico, that it was the baby face that, you know, had to do all the pretty stuff, and the heel just had to be there for the baby, had to be a base, and had to be believable, and had to have a certain credibility within what he was doing. So I was also willing, you know, to just have garbage thrown at me every single night, and that was my goal. My goal was, you know, to actually want these people who, I love my Puerto Rican heritage, but I wanted my own people to want to kick my ass on every single night. And he loved that about me, and so did Bushwhacker Luke. That's why right off the bat, I was brought in, and I was working with Ricky Banderas. I was working with Flaming Boy Steen. I was working with all their top baby faces. Apollo. I was working with them all. I had a great time, and I learned a lot. You know, it's just, that's probably I believe it's the last territory left. Those fans really, really, really believe. They're very passionate about their wrestling. They're very passionate about cheering. You see people, you know, when that baby face is going through his comeback, you see people jumping up and down, holding on to their heads, and they're really screaming, and, you know, just the fandom of how they yell fly every time the baby face hits the heel. It's just amazing. I think any worker needs to experience that really good time or a tour or two of wrestling out in Puerto Rico. It's really a mind-altering experience, you know, for a wrestler.
Yeah,
it's a must-do.
You know, back it up a little bit. Now, when you broke into the business, I got it here. You broke in and were trained by Homicide. Who were some of the other people that may have been involved, and how was it breaking in the business?
When I broke into business, I went to the Jersey Open Wrestling Academy. Frank Idavian gave me my shots, and gave me a chance. He liked that I was a go-getter. He liked that I was aggressive. I wasn't very big at stature at the time. I wasn't probably very muscular at all. I was probably about 240, 250 pounds. You know, just, you 5'11" or whatever. I really didn't have. I was just, I guess, a solid body. I really didn't. I didn't stand out much. I really wasn't into weightlifting as much. Or if I was weightlifting at the time, I really didn't know what I was doing like I do now. He liked that I was a go-getter. He liked that I was aggressive. And he liked that I kind of already had an idea of what I wanted to do. Because I was raised not too far from the wrestling ring. My father was a referee / promoter, to the later 70s, early 80s. So I started training at the Georgia Person Academy, and that's where I met Magic. Andrew Morgan, his wrestling name is Magic. And, he kind of got me started. Make a long story short, the New York crew, rolled in to the Jersey Pro Wrestling Academy one day. And, they were just talking to Frank about whatever they were doing on shows and stuff. And Homicide told me, and, and he's like, I like him. I like that he's aggressive. I like what he's doing. Let me take him. Sure, no problem. It's like, Frank told me, just never forget, where you came from. You started with your middle school. I said, no, Frank, I'm going to train with Homicide, but I'm going to always come here. So training was like probably 2 days a week. I made sure I was at training. There were 2 or 3 days that they were on. Whenever I was in training, I was at the Doghouse in New York. So I was basically leaving work every day and going through the training. And that's where I met Homicide and Low Key and Lathan Tower Torture and Low Key and, all that stuff. I kind of hit the ground running after that. If you were lucky enough to be around that group of badasses like that, then you had to back up, whatever you were doing. You had to earn your place to table with them. So I kind of hit the ground running, and I had a place. And it was a challenge. And anybody who knows me knows how stubborn I am when it comes to challenge. I just ate it up.
That era of wrestling, we've heard a lot about it too. It's kind of like, I don't want to say like, maybe this happened more in the 80s, but I want to say you'd hear about it too on the independents, especially around then. There were a lot of guys who would like try you, like maybe shoot on you in the ring or get stiff with you, really lay into you. How many guys, well, you're not to put a number on it, but I'm assuming that happened, right? There were people that would try to take advantage of you back then or really try to make a name for themselves off of you?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, and I think that stuff happens a lot on the indies and the independents. I know when I was coming up, it was like a dog-eat-dog world, It was either, you had to survive, man. Kill or be killed. It was, you earned your place at the table. Nobody handed you anything. But that was a different time. It felt like that. But you definitely had to back up what you said or be ready to back it up. Because nobody was giving you anything when I came up. Nobody would give you anything. Nobody was, letting you in anywhere. So you kind of had to walk in and you had to have it there, to earn your spot on that card or to have the top guys in that promotion accept that they weren't top guys anymore. Sometimes, it wasn't very nice. Sometimes you had to show how bad you wanted it, and without saying too much about this crazy thing of ours, because there is a certain code that you gotta hold. If your hands, listen, you better be able to back up, what you said or what you stood for. That's all I can really say about that.
Yeah, that's understood. I get that. You were in Ring of Honor at a time, and I'm looking at this list here, guys like Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Bryan Danielson, who would later on be Daniel Bryan, Christopher Daniels, Did you know when you're in that time period, just like how stacked that locker was, like how big, all that talent? Were you aware already, like, oh my God, like this is just an incredible amount of talent in one roster right now?
Oh, we knew we were bad.
Yeah.
We knew we were bad. We knew we could back it up. But what's also important, you forget like a lot of guys like Doug Williams, Jody Fleisch, Xavier, the Briscoes, obviously, Special K, Jimmy Rave, Jimmy Jacobs, all over BJ Whitmer, all of these guys, the SATs, Red, Homicide and Low Key and all these guys. Like, we knew what we were, man. We knew that we were the baddest, roster on the planet. We knew that we had something special going on. It was just a matter of, hey, when is everybody going to see it? We knew, man. We knew that at the time, we knew the talent that we had in that locker room. But, the WWE also had, the Rock had Stone Cold. They had the Attitude Era and, the Ruthless Aggression Era. And it was just, you were dealing with a whole totally different, animal on a totally different scale. TNA wasn't even a thing yet at the time, and it was just a big production and stuff. And, we knew. We knew we didn't have the personalities like that, but man, we were hitting home runs on every show, on every aspect. And Gabe Sapolsky, just had all of us. He had all of us clicking on all cylinders, man. And that crowd. You can watch. I challenge anyone to watch any of those shows. You could tell me we were just a bunch of young savages that were very hungry, that were very eager, and we wanted to let the world know, what was going on. We wanted to let everybody know what the code was, what the code of honor was. And we were just, I don't know, it's like the best way you describe it is like Rocky, when Apollo had talked to Rocky and, talked from the eye to tiger. That's exactly what we had, man. It was just, we were just a badass locker room, man, and we knew it.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
So, but I would imagine, okay, people got to know you're a badass. They got to know you're not one to be messed with. But equally important, I got to imagine, too, you do want to get along with the locker room to a certain point, right? It's almost like any kind of workforce getting along with your coworkers. You can't just, you can't just hate everybody.
1,000%.
Right.
There is no better feeling, and there's no stronger love than I think, other than your children, love for your children, and a bond between parents and child. But man, when you have the respect of your own peers, that is something that's unfathomable. You can't compare that to many other things. Yeah, but there's a ton of love between the boys. But sometimes, things get a little heated, man. There's a lot of testosterone in a lot of these rings, and there's people with different agendas, and sometimes, personalities clash, and sometimes things get a little, they tend to go a little left. Some guys, will crumble. Some guys will rise to the occasion, and some guys will say, hey, I'm in a fight. Some guys fight, and it's just not a question of, hey, well, I'm not going to fight that guy because I knew I was going to get my ass kicked. No, man. I'm going to fight regardless. Either you're going to get exhausted trying to kick my ass, or I'm going to kick your ass. It's not like, hey, I knew I was going to get my ass kicked, so there's no way I was going to mess with that guy. No. I'm not going to go out of my way to mess with anybody. But I'm not backing down either. So you got to kind of be a man's man in this business. There's a lot of respect in the business. It's just, some guys. There's a lot of tough guys out there. And there's a lot of guys that aren't tough. Nowadays, there's a lot of people that have different skills. There could be a guy that's 150 or 160. that can knock the hell out of a guy who's 280.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that guy who's 150 or 160 could probably be, an MMA guy.
Right.
So that's a complete badass. And you don't know it. Because he looks like, the guy behind the register at Walmart,
mm-hmm.
which is nothing against anybody behind the register, but, or who look like an Uber driver, or look like a cab driver or a bartender or something. Nothing against that, but, when you think about a professional wrestler, you think of a machine, a guy that looks like Hogan, or a guy that looks like Braun Strowman, or The Rock. You don't really look at guys like Finn Balor, or a guy like Conor McGregor, or a guy like the size of Pat Buck. Right. But I just feel like there's certain people, that, you don't have to be the bigger guy anymore. A guy who's 170 could easily smoke a guy who's 240. And I don't care what anybody says.
Now, you watch enough MMA after a while, and I'll just pick this guy as an example. You watch a Jose Aldo kick who's at 145, and you could have a bunch of 200-pounders in the room with you who aren't fighters. They're going to go, I don't ever want to be kicked by that guy, ever. Like, he'll
yeah, man. Absolutely. I don't know if I remember watching the UFC, the very first UFC. Okay.
Yep. And
there was a guy, I don't remember his name. I remember the other guy's name, the 600-pound sumo named Emmanuel Yarborough. Oh. And this other guy couldn't have been more than probably 188 pounds. But he hit this sumo guy, Emmanuel Yarborough, so hard that he broke his hand. But he knocked the guy out, and he won the match. He beat the big 600-pound sumo. Like I said, and then, like the whole thing with Royce Gracie, Royce Gracie and Kimo, Kimo looked like he was chiseled. He looked like he was a solid 240 pounds. And here's, Royce Gracie, who's probably 175 pounds, and he doesn't have any muscle on him. He's just throwing up there in a gi, but he jujitsued the shit out of him, and he beat his ass.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes. You have to respect every man, no matter what size or, whatever they look like nowadays. You gotta be mindful of what you can do, man. If you ain't got hands,
mm-hmm.
Just shut the hell up.
Right, just do the job then. You took some time off for a while, maybe about 5 years. What prompted you to retire at that particular time in your career and your life?
It was time, man. I needed some change. My body needed a break. When you're young, and sometimes you think you have a lot of things figured out, and you make a lot of stupid mistakes, and that on top, I just needed a break, man. My body was banged up. I really needed a break, and it was time. And when it was time for me to come back, I missed it enough to where it was time for me to come back, and I missed it, and I was healthy, and I felt good again. I believe I came back better than before, better than what I was before.
To use go back to MMA for a second, use kind of an analogy. Robbie Lawler, who'd been fighting since he was like 18, but he made this career resurgence in the UFC like later on in his career. And he ended up being the welterweight champion, for people who don't know. And he credited that for a lot of years he took off aspiring. He had rested his body. Do you think taking that time off helped you to be able to perform at the level you perform now, at that high level still, and be able to take bumps right now still?
I think the time off made me, of course, it helps anybody physically.
Yeah.
But absolutely 1,000,000%. I believe, it made me, I came back smarter. I came back refreshed. I did a lot of studying. I watched a lot of wrestling. I analyzed a lot of wrestling. But definitely the time off helps. The time off helps anyone. Time off helps anyone, but it's also the kiss of death for a lot of people. sometimes, time off is a wrestler's, number one enemy. There's no bigger enemy, than time off. Sometimes, in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Then in a lot of cases, sometimes guys need a break. I mean, look at Shawn Michaels. Right. Shawn Michaels been away for what? I don't know how many years.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
And he came back better. He came back with a different mindset. He came back. He had to detach himself. I believe, from the business. Even though he watched still from afar, but he had to reanalyze things, and he came back so much smarter. He came back so much better. And it's hard to believe how a guy like that could come back better.
Yeah, I remember that match he came back to with Triple H. It was one of the SummerSlams. I want to think 04. And I thought the same thing as a fan. As a fan, you hear everything with the back, and you see him, and it's like, oh my God, how is this guy doing this? Just amazing. Now you come back into the business. Now, when you take like 5 years off, like how do you just enter back into business? Do you call a promoter? Like how does that work?
Actually, Frank and I had known somebody mutually. This person saw Frank. Frank said, "Hey, tell this fucking guy to call me." Because Frank had moved out of Bayonne. He had moved down to South Jersey. I was still in Bayonne. But Frank had seen this person, person gave me a message. So a few days later, I called Frank. And I'll never forget it. It was a Friday night. And I gave him a phone call. And he said to me, he said, "I don't want to know one thing. I don't want to hear one word. I don't want to know anything. All I want to know is, are you ready to come back?" And that was it, man. It was like, and that was it. It's kind of like when you wake up, when Rocky woke up out of, it felt like when Rocky, his wife, woke up out of the coma, Rocky 2, and she said to Rocky, "Fight."
Yeah, win. I remember that.
Yeah, win. And Nick said, "That's it. Let's go. Take us."
That is such a great line. You make it back to Ring of Honor eventually, which I'm sure is great. One thing I'm curious about, like I remember seeing you earlier this year in the NWA TV title tournament as a guy who was a big fan of Dusty Rhodes and some of that era. Was that just super cool? Like, is there a part of you, like the fan, to be in the TV title tournament for the NWA?
Man, that was so cool that Ring of Honor chose me to represent them.
Yeah.
In the tag time, the television title tournament.
Yeah.
It was just such incredible, walking into that studio and just being in an NWA ring, under NWA banner, the setup and just seeing the television title from afar, it was awesome. It really was. Like, and for anybody that said that it wasn't awesome, they're full of shit. It really was awesome. I did the whole thing with a smile on my face. It was great. I got to meet a lot of really awesome people. I got to, I really can't put it into words, man. It was a real cool thing, and I'm really happy. I'm really, really happy I got the opportunity to do that.
That's awesome. Nowadays, we're all pretty much on lockdown, trying to do our thing, and some of us have jobs that we can still work, but obviously there's not as much to do right now. What are you doing to keep busy? What are you up to?
Not too many people can say too much nowadays because you don't want to get anybody in trouble. Mm-hmm. You don't want to give anybody you don't want people getting fined or people getting in trouble anywhere. But I'm doing the best that I can, to stay in shape. Obviously, the closings of all the major gyms, in the country was a big hit to a lot of guys. And hey, if you don't have weights, you're kind of, you're in a bind. When the pandemic hit, that's the first thing that a lot of people did was they went out and they bought weights. So, weights then became extremely overpriced. I'm a weightlifter, man. I'm not like And I'm not knocking yoga. I'm not knocking the whole abs thing and everything. I mean, I've never had an ab. I have a beer belly I have a beer keg for a belly, but, I feel like I'm well conditioned. I am what I am. I'm a weightlifter to the death. I love pumping iron. I love being in the gym. I love the grunt. I love the sweat. I love the cursing. I love the pain. I love being uncomfortable. I think that's one of my strong suits. I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable. And, I think you need that to be successful and to fight through pain, because without being comfortable, being uncomfortable, once pain comes knocking on your door, you're going to get into the fetal position and you're going to give in. So, you got to find different ways to train and to do stuff. I have a personal trainer. He happened to be one of my students at Respiratory. And I talked to him, and he said, yeah, man. He said, I would love to train. I said, what are you looking to do? I said, well, I'm looking to become more explosive. I'm looking for, explosiveness in me, and I'm really looking to, I just want you to beat my butt until, I said, just try to break me.
Yeah.
Try to break me, because I promise you, I'm not gonna give in. And that's what we're doing. That's our understanding. He literally tries to kick my ass every single training session that we have at his studio, and I won't give in. I won't stop. I won't give up. And that's kind of, what I wanted to accomplish and what I wanted to do. I'm doing a ton of things that I thought I could never do my entire life, and at the same time, I'm also doing things that I only did in high school when I was a football player. I'm in high school. So now, a few years later, I'm a lot older, and I'm doing a lot of these things that I never knew I could do, and I feel like I'm one of the hardest workers in the room, and I'm going to try to outwork everyone, and I think that's what we should all do.
Yeah.
As individuals, we should all be trying to, work our hardest during this pandemic to try to come back in some sort of respectable ring shape, And, Steve Mack, my former partner, used to ask me when I would get in the car when we would get ready to go, he says, well, how you feeling today, old man? And I was in perfect fighting conditions. And he knew if I said that, man, I was ready to kick ass. I was ready to go. And we were going to kill it. So right now, goddammit, I'm in perfect fighting condition, and I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to kick anybody's ass. I'll kick your ass, too, if you want to go.
I am all set with that, man. I stay in my lane. But
I was just kidding, man.
No, I know. You're odd, no way. Like, when you talk about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, just the personal thing with me, we were talking about this before we started talking. I deliver bread. It's a business I do, but it's like I have a contract. It's like a franchise, and part of that is getting to stores at certain points, and I have to get up every morning at 2 a.m. to leave to get my job done. That is not the kind of style that I am not developed to get up at 2 a.m., but I do it.
Let me
I've been doing it
man.
for 3.5 years. Go ahead.
What you do is no cakewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Getting up at 2 a.m, every day, there's nothing to sneeze at, man. And I'm going to tell you something. I thank you. I'm looking right now at the top of my refrigerator, and I see all this bread on top of my refrigerator. And it's because of people like you get it to the places that for me to go purchase this bread. And, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank all these guys out there and all these men and women, all these boys and girls that are out there doing essential work that are forgotten. People forget, hey, look at this, look at these Portuguese men, man. Look how awesome this is. Look how great they are. But you know what? A lot of people bust their ass, wake up early, and spend time away from their family to get this bread to you. So I'd like to thank you. Hats off to you and all these essential workers out there. Nothing but respect for what you do. And,
Oh, man. Well, I appreciate that. Definitely, it's reciprocal, man. You and all the pro wrestlers, even now, keeping me entertained, man. Whether it's like I'm watching empty arena matches or I'm going back and watching stuff on YouTube, it's nice to have a break sometimes from your day. So we're all in this together, I think,
That's right.
Is there anything you want to promote or want to tell people where they can find you?
Well, where you can find me on the Honor Club, Ring of Honor Wrestling. You can find me all over the place. You can go to the Ring of Honor, ROHshop.com, and you can purchase my T-shirt, my Danny Moss T-shirt, Ring of Honor Original Since Day One T-shirt, or you can find a host of all your favorite Ring of Honor superstars merchandise and Ring of Honor merchandise available to the general public. You can also find me on Ring of Honor TV, or just anything Ring of Honor. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. I'm very easy to find. Just type in Danny Monk, and I come up, and you see this beautiful face that mother people can love. And I usually answer everyone. As long as you're on there and you're respectable, I will answer you the same way.
Absolutely. All right, Dan, I appreciate you being on. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me. Fast Day, the best of luck to you. Stay safe. It's a tough world out there right now. Thank you for everything that you do. Please stay safe. And thank you for getting all of those wonderful products for us to eat. For our families. For our hot dogs, our hamburgers, and everything else that we love. We need that bread for. So I thank you, and I appreciate everything that you do.
This is Rudy Gonzalez of the Texas Wrestling Academy here in San Antonio, Texas, and you're listening to the Working Stand Podcast.
It's the Working Fans Podcast with Dave, and today we have a longtime wrestler, started in 1984, and a longtime trainer, Mr. Rudy Gonzalez. Rudy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Great, man. Great to have you on. I was doing a little research, and you can help me out with this. I saw that you were trained by, this is the people it listed, Manny Fernandez, Tully Blanchard, Chavo Guerrero, and Ken Tims?
Yeah, and the names go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Back then, we didn't have an actual wrestling school where you trained like now you train to be a wrestler. So actually, I started training in 1982. Southwest Wrestling did have a wrestling school, but it was mainly like Larry Lang was the trainer of that, and he did a lot of just amateur wrestling, a lot of cardio stuff and stuff like that. And I guess that was the start of your, if you continued, you would later go on and train to be a professional wrestler. But that ended up dissolving, and they asked me if I could help train some guys here and there, and I did. But I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and it was mainly just, let's get in the ring and practice doing this or whatever. And then when I, somewhere in there, they asked me I was traveling with the group also and selling T-shirts and stuff like that. And then somewhere during that time, they asked me to referee some matches, and I did. And then, on occasion, maybe like Manny Fernandez would say, hey, what are we doing tomorrow morning? I was open to anything, so I was like, nothing. And so, well, meet me at the ring at 10 o'clock in the morning, or Chavo would tell me that, or Ken Tims would like, hey, you want to do some cardio? Sure, all right, meet me at the junction where we did our TV shows. Meet me at the junction at 11 o'clock, or Dick Slater would say, when a guy does this, you should do that. Or, different guys gave me different little tips here and there. So I learned a little bit from everybody. Tully Blanchard was like, one day he came in and he's like, hey, let me teach you how to do a body slam. And I said, okay. So he told me where to put my hands, all the other stuff, whatever. And he scoots me up and he slams me. And he's like, how does that feel? I guess I never took a body slam before. So
right.
And so all in all, he ended up giving me like 10 body slams one day. And I never gave him any though. And so
smart guy.
That's how I learned how to do a body slam. By taking them 10 times in a row by Tully Blanchard. And the rest of the day, the next 2 days, my back felt like it was blown up. It was just like, up to that point, I'd never felt that way before. And then as time went on, then you get used to it and stuff like that. But yeah, I lift those guys because they were the ones that really gave me the most time. But I mean, there were a lot of guys, in the dressing room, it was like a classroom in itself, They just always giving you tips and advice here and there,
Now, would you say you had a pretty good entry into the business? I mean, I've heard some stories where guys, I mean, I'm sure they definitely, they tested you, but you've heard some brutal stories too of guys getting legs broken and stuff. It sounds like you had a lot of people at least willing to help you out.
You know what? In all honesty, and I'm not, trying to sugarcoat nothing. But I said it before, though, but I never had a guy that ever tried to abuse me or try and, freak me out, I guess. I don't know. I hear guys that say, oh, yeah, you hear the Hulk Hogan story.
Right.
The guy that broke him in snapped his ankle, and you hear Al Snow talk about, Ole and those guys would, or whoever would nail guys and stretch them and stuff in the ring. And I've seen guys do that, but it was never done to me. I was always treated right, and I think a lot of it had to do with I gave all the older guys the respect that I felt like they deserved. And that's just the way I was raised. I was always yes sir, no sir, no ma'am, yes ma'am.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I do this? Can I help you with that? That type of stuff.
That'll open some doors for you.
Yeah, I mean, and no one ever told me, but I did it. No one ever told me you got to carry in the veteran's luggage, and I did. If I was grabbing my stuff, hey, you want me to grab your bag as well? And yeah, sure, okay. And I did. I was never told this, but I did it. I was always the guy that drove guys around. I was never told you got to pay your dues by driving everybody, but I didn't mind. And to this day, I enjoy driving. When I go on road trips with my guys, you can ask them down to the most recent trip we ever made, who does the driving, and they'll say me because I enjoy driving. So I was never abused by anybody. Closest I can say I was tested was when the first day I worked. I had a match in Laredo, Mexico, and it was against a guy named Solar. And luckily, due to my my amateur wrestling training, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was something. Solar tried to stretch me, and I could tell, and I knew, and I didn't let him. And I mean, I'm not saying I was fighting back with him stuff. I just wouldn't let him stretch me. And so when we went to the back, he told me, I did well and stuff. And then the next week I went back there, another guy named Guerrero Negro tried to do the same thing. He wasn't as, years later, or later on I found out, he wasn't as skilled. Solar was actually an Olympic wrestler. Guerrero Negro was just a guy that knew how to shoot. And then he tried to do the same thing, and same thing. I wouldn't let him do it. And then the third week was a guy named Mano Negro, I think it was, and he tried to, I shouldn't say shoot on me. They just tried, and I wouldn't let him. And then, I guess those were three guys that, that were testers, I guess, or I don't know. And so then after that, my matches were a lot easier, and guys, but I was never abused as, breaking into stuff,
No, that's good. That's good to hear. You debuted in 1984, right?
What was that again?
Did you debut? Was it 1984? Was your debut?
I actually, my first match was February 6th, 1984.
Wow. How many different territories did you work? I started watching you, I want to say the first time I remember you was like in the 90s. I saw you doing some enhancement stuff with WWE, but you had a long career before that.
I started with Southwest Wrestling.
Okay.
Blanchard, with Joe Blanchard and Tully and Manny, all those guys down there. And then Southwest shut down, and a guy named Fred Barron took over, and he started a group called Texas All-Star Wrestling, and I worked with them. And it was based out of here in Texas. I worked briefly for World Class, and then Fred was actually the local promoter for World Class Wrestling, and then he bought out Southwest Wrestling and created Texas All-Star Wrestling. And then when Fred ended up shutting down, and I made a couple of trips to Florida and, different other spots, but nothing like, where I lived there forever and ever. So when Fred shut down, by that time, the independents started like sprouting up. So there are a few guys here and there that did some shows around Texas. And then one day Dusty Wolf asked me if I was free to to fly to, it might have been like Indianapolis or something like that, or I was sure for what. And he said, well, Vince needs some guys, and so, would you mind? And I said, and he told me, your flight's paid for, you get paid this much money, your hotel, if I don't remember correctly, I think the hotel was paid for also, and I was like, sure, so I flew up and did some enhancement stuff with WWF, and then I started going down to Mexico, like I said, and that was like 3-4 days out of the week, and, the time that I would come back to the States, it just so happened that it was time for another WWF loop. So, I was doing that back and forth, and then Joe Blanchard called me one day, and he said, what are you doing for money? And I said, well, I'm doing this and this and whatever. and he said, would you mind helping me with some stuff I have to do with World Championship Wrestling and for NWA? And I said, sure, what do I got to do? He goes, well, I'm the event coordinator, and I need help doing stuff, so would you mind helping me? So, the thing was that Joe was, he had a bad hip, and he was, it was hard for him to get around stuff. So I was going to be the guy to drive him around and help him do whatever he needed to do. But he was also in charge of one of the rings. And when I first started, that's what I did, was the ring. So I started doing that with him, and then one day somebody, I think like Ricky Morton or Kevin Sullivan, said, hey, this kid can work, because they knew me from Joe and stuff. And so I got to do a couple of shows for NWA, WCW. I refereed for them, and then at the same time doing the WWF trips, and then going back and forth to Mexico. And then before I knew it, I was, and doing the local, indie shows around Texas. And then before I knew it, Sean called and asked me to help him run a school. That was like in 1998.
Now, you seem like a guy, you're a hard worker, from what I can tell. For you, what was probably one of the more challenging things about the business? Was it the travel or the bumps, or what was, for you, one of the more difficult things?
Staying busy. I mean, the travel's always going to be there,
yep.
No matter what. I mean, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to travel. The bumps, they're there.
Right.
You can't say, I am not going to bump for you. Just staying busy, man, because I came in at a time when, all these big guys were running all over the place, and Kerry Von Erichs, Lex Luger and stuff. And so there really wasn't a whole lot of room for smaller guys like me. I could work, but I'm very upfront about this. I could work, and I understood working. I just wasn't the bodybuilder guy. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the most charismatic guy. I'm not Eddie Gilbert. I'm not Tom Pritchard. I'm not Brad Armstrong. I'm not, So, my opportunities were kind of limited. But, and that's why I went to Mexico, because there in Mexico, believe it or not, I'm 5'8", but in Mexico, I'm a lot bigger than a lot of guys there. So I got a lot of work down there. But the most challenging part, I guess, was just staying busy at that time, and uncertainty. You just didn't know when you were going to work again, or when was your last working day, or the politics and stuff. That I've never had a problem with that. That was I just try to stay away from it. I got along with a lot of guys, whether they were on this side of the fence or that side of the fence. But yeah, I would say the most challenging part was just staying busy and paying the bills.
Obviously, you work with, you said, the Texas Wrestling Academy with Sean there. Do you have a preference between, being an active competitor or teaching? Do you have one that you like more than the other, or both different?
I honestly, in all honesty, I didn't get into pro wrestling to be a wrestler. I didn't, and that's probably why all the other stuff, the charisma stuff and all that, that's probably, all that's probably tied up into that package there. I didn't get into pro wrestling to wrestle. I got into pro wrestling to learn the wrestling business. But in high school, after high school, my dreams or whatever were to be a football coach for my high school. Yeah. And so, I mean, so what drew me into Southwood Wrestling was the fact that Tully Blanchard was a quarterback here in San Antonio. He was a high-profile quarterback. Yeah. And then there was Manny Fernandez and Bruiser Brody, and Wahoo was here. Wahoo, I recognize his name from playing for the New York Jets, and I believe the Houston Oilers years ago. Ernie Ladd came through here. Ernie Ladd played for the Oilers, I believe. So many football guys in that territory back then. Exactly. And so that's kind of like what drew me in, the relationship with football and wrestling. There was a time in 98 when Sean called. The very week that Sean called me to run a school, I quit. And it wasn't the first time. I'd actually, and I'm not proud to say this, but at one point I actually walked out of a ring because I was just so frustrated, so angry with the way things were and that type of stuff. And so when Sean called and asked me, and so back to, when I quit, I actually just walked out and just grabbed my stuff. I gave my payday back to the promoter, back to Booker, who coincidentally was Jose Lothario. Oh, wow. Yeah, who also ran Sean's school. So when Sean called me and he asked me to help him with the school, the first thing I told him was, I really don't want to wrestle, Sean. He said, I'm not asking you to wrestle. I'm asking you to help train my guys. And I was like, well, in that case, then I'm in. And we hadn't even talked about money yet. But as far as, wrestling and training, man, I would much rather train guys and develop guys and, watch them become from nothing to something. The biggest, and I'm not saying it because it's him, but one of the, actually two of the biggest accomplishments that I've, I feel like I've done is creating two young men that were, eyes wide open and, wet behind the ears of Brian Danielson and Brian Kendrick. And then 20 years later, Brian Danielson is like the biggest name in the business, one of the biggest names in the business, and Brian Kendrick he's up there as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story. I watched wrestling since the 80s. I'm 43. Grew up on the Hogans, and, I transferred, started really liking the Bret Harts and the Perfects. And out of the last 10, 15 years, if there's one guy who has constantly kept me interested on the main, top level national scene, it's Brian Danielson. Like, his matches are just so compelling, and he's so good at he can be a great heel too, but he's a really good babyface, and he's one of those guys that really draw you in and you want to root for.
The first thing Brian Kendrick asked me, and Brian Danielson was right next to him, was, "Am I too small? Am I too small to do this?" And Brian Danielson looked at him and then looked at us as me and Sean standing next to her. Like, yeah, are we too small? Because they're the same size,
right?
And Sean said, "No, not at all. What do you think?" And I'm like, "I don't think so. I'm the same size as they are." So if I laughed up to that point where I was in like 15 years, 16 years, so if I was still in it, I didn't see why they couldn't. So it was just a matter of putting in the work, and both of those boys have, and so seeing them develop the way they have, man, it's like, you could put the world title on me. You could, I don't know. It's nothing can compare to seeing those two boys, and anyone else that I've trained come from, point A to point C or wherever they're at and be as good as they are. So yeah, training part by far is what I enjoy doing the most.
Now, from a training perspective, was there anybody that you saw right away and you knew almost instantly, okay, this guy could be a star? And on the flip side, which is somebody said, I don't know, and that guy ended up being like a big surprise to you?
All the time. All the time. Sean had some, Brian and Brian, I'm not going to say we didn't think, we knew they would, we both knew they would do well. Just not, I didn't think they would do, Sean may say differently because he knows more than I do, I guess, but I didn't think they would be at this, this far in the game. I didn't think they would be the names they are now. On the other side of that, man, we had guys, there was a kid that came in from the University of Washington, I believe. And I remember pulling him up, Brian something or other. I remember I pulled him up to look him up and stuff. And he was like an All-American. He was, but the only thing was he had knee surgery in his senior year. And so his position on the draft dropped quite a bit. And so he said, well, screw it, I'll try wrestling. And he was a big kid, athletic as hell. He just had a shitty attitude, And, you just don't do that with Sean. And there are a couple other guys, man. There was another kid who was on the practice squad for Washington Redskins. His name was Kevin. Huge kid, man. And again, athletic. If you would have put the Kane mask on him, you couldn't tell the difference. He was just, yeah, and we called him Kane. But I don't know, just something it's like the bigger guys, the guys that, that we were like, oh yeah, he's going to make it. Those are the guys that they just put in, and I know I'm putting like a blanket over all of them, but, might as well. But the bigger guys that came in and you're like, that guy has it, they were the guys that came in and put in the least amount of effort. And that sucked because we always preach to the guys, you get in what you put in, you take out what you put in. And so these guys, because I guess they were bigger and stuff like that, they just didn't feel like they had to do as much. Meanwhile, Brian Danielson and Brian Kendrick, they talked about it many times. Meanwhile, the smaller guys would try and find as much time to get in the ring, and there were times when training was over, and those guys would, hey, can we stick around and try some other stuff? Can you hang out with us a little bit longer and teach us some other, and shit over. Meanwhile, the bigger guys were like, see you tomorrow, coach, and then walk out.
Yeah.
And, so the smaller guys, it seemed like they had a chip on their shoulder of some type. They worked harder. They, the matches were always, like you said, compelling. They weren't always punch and kick and that type of stuff. It's just weird. So, I mean, there was, as far as, the guys that we thought we
would make it and didn't. There were several, and a lot of them were the guys that were 6'2" and 250 and those type of guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember I started jiu-jitsu last year, and there were a lot of guys. A lot of it came down to attitude, like, we've been talking about. Like, there were guys, if you were humble and you'd go in and you're willing to learn, even if you weren't good at first, you could get better. But if you had a bad attitude, even if you were like athletically gifted and there was a more experienced guy who could take you down on the mat and submit you, and you didn't handle it well, you knew that guy wasn't going to last very long.
Yeah, I mean, and I tell my students this all the time. I mean, I'd much rather work with a guy and train a guy that's humble and, is willing to work hard. Doesn't have to be the greatest athlete in the world, doesn't have to be the most talented, doesn't have to be the most anything. Just come in and willing to learn and work. Than a guy who is the biggest athlete, who is the most talented, who, those guys seem to feel like they're entitled.
Yeah.
I guess. And it's just, especially in pro wrestling, it just doesn't work that way, man.
No, and that's a great life lesson, too, because, I've managed a store before, too, a grocery store, and it was always like the kids who were willing to try and had good attitude that you wanted to work with, even if somebody else was just naturally better and quicker at a job. But if he just had a poor attitude after a while, you're just like, just get this kid out of here. Get me someone who just wants to do his job,
It gets old. There was a guy, that we were, Brian and some of the boys had just gotten their tryout with WWE, and so of course the buzz around the gym was, who's going to be next? And so there was one kid. He was like 6'2", and he was stacked pretty well. He was a good-looking kid. So he said he was about 6 foot, I'd say. I don't know. And so somehow or another, the conversation came up where I'm going to get a tryout and stuff like that. And somebody said something like, well, what makes you think you're going to get a tryout? He goes, well, I'm just as big as Hunter. And me and Sean, we were talking, and we heard that, and Sean, turned around and looked at him, and whoever he was talking to was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I almost look just like him. And he looked at Sean, he goes, isn't that right, Sean? And Hunter's a beast. Right. I've seen him in person, and these two look nothing alike. And Sean just like, oh, I can't tell the difference. Yeah, you're right, I can't tell the guy didn't catch the sarcasm, so he goes, see, I told you.
That's great. You were part of an angle, I think, in Ring of Honor for a bit where, I don't know if I want to call it an angle, but some of your students would wrestle and they would have you in the corner. How was that? How was that relationship? How did that come about?
So when Sean was running his promotion, Rob Feinstein came down and recorded some matches. Rob Feinstein and Doug Gentry. And got to meet them, good guys, helped them out with whatever they needed help on. And they were nice also. And so then they were down here, I guess, for a week or so, for a weekend. And so then a couple of years, a year or so later, now I'm stuck with Sean gave me the promotion, so I'm stuck with everything. And I'm not Shawn Michaels, so I'm trying to figure out a way to get my school out there, and the students and what have you. So I'm scrolling through the internet. There was a guy named, I don't remember what his name was, but he ran a promotion. He tried to run a promotion called Major League Wrestling or something, or Main Event Wrestling. Okay. And so he couldn't get anybody on that show. He said, on my next show, I'll bring you up here, bring your student free. I said, all right. At the same time, I'm talking to Rob Feinstein. They're putting out a buzz about starting a promotion as well. So I messaged Rob, hey, you think maybe, I don't know if you remember me or not, this is Rudy Gonzalez down here in San Antonio. And Rob was like, yeah, we got to know who you are. Sure, no problem. So we talked a little bit back and forth. Meanwhile, the guy that was running the main event thing, he ran a show, and I believe everybody's check bounced, and it was a big mess. So I was like, screw that. So Rob said, I can't, it was Rob, Doug Gentry, and Gabe Sapolsky. I didn't know Gabe at the time, and so Rob said, I can't guarantee you a spot, but if you want to come up here, if anything opens up, I didn't want to have to put a couple of guys on. I said, all right. So I got my guys together, and I said, hey, in a few weeks, who wants to go to Philadelphia? This is what's going on, and I really have, and I really did. I really had a good feeling with Ring of Honor because Rob was involved, and the way it sounded, and some of the guys they had on there. I never met AJ Styles or Amazing Red or Xavier or some of those guys, but I read about them on the internet. And I told the guys that I really have a good feeling about this. It's a good opportunity. Plus, they'd already had Bryan Danielson on the show and Brian Kendrick, and so my guys, I had a bunch of guys that said, all right, let's go. So we went up there, and sure enough, Gabe and Rob and Doug, they gave us the first match, I think it was, and it was a Texas Wrestling Academy challenge or something. And that came out really good. The boys all worked hard, and, same. I try to have my guys mirror me as far as yes sir, no sir, that type of stuff. I guess they, I guess they rubbed, the powers that be the right way. And so when the show was over, Gabe came up and said, if you guys want to, if you guys want to come up here again, I'll have a spot for you guys. And so we just started going up there. And before you knew it, it was, I took some good guys up there. I took Paul London and Michael Shane and Hernandez and Masada, it was like an all-star group. And then there was Fast Eddie and Don Juan. And so everybody, and then on occasion, they would, I'd bring up another student and they would put them in, and maybe they worked out, maybe they didn't work out, but, that's how it got started, and to this day, I have a good relationship with Rob Feinstein and Gabe. Doug Gentry passed away a few years ago, rest in peace. But and it's just a matter of treating the opportunities like they mean something, and they saw that, and like I said, to this day, I have a great relationship with those guys.
Some keys to success here, if people are listening here. Good attitude, networking, and timing are all important in success.
Exactly.
In my research, I came across something else you were involved in. And I'm going to say this. I grew up on old school wrestling, and there were a lot of stereotypes back in the day. This shit would never probably fly today. But if you know where I'm going with this or not, I don't know, I'll tell it. But you were involved, I want to say it was a skit where JBL was patrolling the border of Mexico and not allowing anybody to come in. He was playing this heel character to get heat, and I was just curious how this came about. But like I was saying, there's no way this shit would ever go on right now, but it was interesting, I have to say. So how did that happen?
So JBL and Eddie Guerrero were doing their little program.
Yes.
And so Bruce Pritchard calls me, and he asked me if I could find, somebody to fill that spot of, he didn't tell me what it's for. And he just said, he said something like, he said something like, do you have any of your friends, or can you get, like, a Mexican family? Even the way he...
Right.
Even though he presented it was today, he'd be like, what are you talking about, man? Are you crazy? But he said something like, can you put together like a Mexican family, like your typical Mexican family, like a father and a mother and a grandmother and like a bunch of kids? And I'm like,
do you have a family lying around?
But he's not lying, though. And I was like, yeah, sure, let me see what I can do. I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, sure, yeah, let me,
Right.
And I called a couple of friends of mine that I knew, a couple of workers and stuff, and they're like, well, what's it for? What's it, who's it for? What are they going to pay us? What's it going to be like? What? And I'm like, I don't know, man. All I know is that, this is what they asked for, and I can tell you, because Bruce didn't tell me anything else, and then I can tell you that it may be worth your time. It may be worth it. And so the two guys that I called, they're both like, nah, man, we're not going to do it. That's messed up, And so I called Bruce up, and I told him I can't find anybody. So Bruce said, why don't you do it? And I was like, all right, sure, what I got to do? I said, I don't have, my kids, I had like 3 kids at the time. They're like 3 and 4 and 7, and I didn't think the mom would go for it. I was like, I don't think I can get the mom and the kids to go along with it, but, he goes, don't worry about it. He goes, we got somebody anyway. We got somebody. I said, all right. So I took Paul London up there with me, and so we did this deal, man. And when I got there, finally, Bruce finally explained to me. He said, "Okay, you guys are going to be illegal aliens, and you're going to get caught crossing the border, and Layfield's going to catch you guys, and we're going to do this, this, and this." And that's how it came about. We started like around 6 or 7 in the evening, and we didn't finish till like 1 in the morning. Wow. And we only took like 5 takes. And it's just the process of doing it, recording it and then looking at the video and then trying to reposition stuff or whatever. I didn't realize it would take so long, but at the end of the day, we got compensated. I got compensated very well. It was, we did it, I think it was JBL's ranch, it might have been his family's ranch or something, and we went to the kitchen afterwards, and Bruce opened up a briefcase with money, and I was like, holy shit. Timing,
man. Just agree to do it.
I didn't think I'd earned this much money, but then he goes, how much do I owe you? And I'm like, I don't know, Bruce. To me, it was nothing.
Right.
And he started counting off hundreds, and I was like, holy shit. So the cool thing was we did that, and then like 2 weeks later, WWE was in San Antonio, like for SmackDown. And so whenever they came through, I take some guys to get like a little tryout or whatever, stuff like, or work as extras and stuff. And we were in the ring in the afternoon, and I was standing off to the side by the ramp, and in the corner of my eye, I see Vince McMahon walking down. And so, I didn't think anything of it. But then, I put my attention back on the ring, and I feel him grab my shoulder. He's like, I just want to tell you thank you for what you did. It was greatly. It's going to help the storyline greatly. Really do appreciate it, man. It was very tremendous. I loved it. And it just really complimented the whole deal and stuff. And, this is Vince McMahon telling me this. And so obviously I was like, yes, that type of stuff.
Right.
and then they showed it on the Jumbotron or the Titantron that night during SmackDown, and you could hear people in the audience. We're at the I guess the time was the Coliseum, this huge venue, and you can hear when I came out there, you could hear some people like, "Hey, that's Rudy Gonzalez," that type of stuff. Eddie was very, thank you, man. That was very cool of you to do that. And Layfield's, said thank you as well. I mean, it was I was just trying to help the company. I didn't. It was very cool to do also.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll tell you what. Even though I didn't know you were doing that at the time, I remember that angle very well. Like when it first came out, and it was different. And I remember it got good heat on the angle. It made JBL a great heel. So I mean, hey, it worked.
And I think it was called like one of the greatest moments of SmackDown history.
Oh, yeah. That's so funny.
But yeah, you're right. They couldn't do that. I don't know. Maybe they could, but I don't think it would be better not to do something like that today.
We're definitely in a very more sensitive culture. I would say that.
Yeah.
But what are you up to right now?
Right now, I just got through washing my truck and vacuuming. I'm getting ready to make a trip to New Mexico for a couple of days, even in the social distancing era. Just trying to stay safe, man. Just trying to, hope this thing passes through. And I don't know what I would say getting back to normal, but who knows what normal is going to be in a few months or a few weeks, or I don't know,
Yeah, I do look forward to the day when we can have, and I know there's bigger things to worry about, but I do look forward to the day when we can have wrestling with fans in the arena again. That'd be nice to see.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, you're right. There are other things more important, but then again, when I was, and I brought this up to other people as well, was when I came in, one of the things I was told was pro wrestling fans come to see the wrestling shows to take their mind off of everything else in the world. You got the guys that are, construction workers, you have the doctors, lawyers, you have the professionals, you have the, blue collar guys sitting in the crowd, kick his ass, that type of stuff, cheering and booing, and you have poor people, you have, well off, you have all different people from every corner of the spectrum, and they're all sitting there just forgetting about, and if there was a way to do this stuff, and WWE is doing a very good job, I think, and Impact, I guess, are doing a good job of trying to keep the product out there, and people sitting back, and it's a little different now because the fans aren't boo, yay, that kind of stuff. The fans now are like, oh, they messed the spot up. Oh my God!
You're right.
Oh my God! It's just enjoy the matches, man. Enjoy, I'm sure, because I've been in that position, I'm sure they're not really, let me put it this way, I'm sure it's not that easy to sit there and go through all the motions you go to in a course of a wrestling match in front of nobody.
I'll say this, as a fan for many years, like, I never noticed it, but you look watching the match, and I can tell, like, when some people are instinctively playing to a crowd that's not there. But then I've noticed in some other matches where the people that are more vocal and maybe a little louder and can talk trash during a match, their matches seem to get a little more over with me. I get more invested in that. I'm like, okay, so they're verbally kind of pulling me in.
Right. It's a different deal, man. I mean, I admire those guys because, especially the younger guys that are working, because they've never, this is a new deal to them. They're used to being in front of, at the AT&T Center or whatever, the big arenas and stuff for Raw and SmackDown. And, a lot of the older guys, are probably like, just shut up and get out there. Because, that's just, back in the day, man, even though we talk about, old school wrestling stuff, there were some shitty crowds back in the day that, and the attitude was you'd do the same stuff you would do if there were 5 people or as if there were 500 people. If there's five people, you want to try and draw in and bring in more people and build up the audience. And guys, they don't understand that, So I get it, and
And I will say this, guys like Bryan Danielson, I saw a match he had the other night with Cesaro. I can tell, they're probably used to having been in that position before. And you can tell, and it shows in a match where they go out there and just concentrate on telling the story of their match. And it's more engaging because of that.
So nowadays, okay, you're exactly right. Years ago, when we were starting, when when these guys were breaking in at Sean's place, we would do a TV show, and we'd have 300-400 people, whatever, mainly because it was Sean, well, partly because it was Sean's promotion, that we grew so many, but it was also because the kids were out there working their butts off. But I really feel like if you just said, these wrestling students are going to put on a show, we wouldn't have had that many people. So I think part of that had to do with Sean being out there. But when we would go to the towns, there were some places that we did, that we did shows at where there were 20 or 30 or 10, and Brian, I remember those guys how are you supposed to wrestle in front of these people? And me and Sean were very adamant with go out there and just do your thing, just work your ass off. We were very adamant about it. It didn't matter how few there were, just go out there and work. And so now, when the first match I saw was I think the first match was Brian with Gulak, Drew Gulak, and they beat each other up. That was one of the first matches and one of the first no audience matches they had.
Yeah.
They went out there and beat each other up, man. It was and I was like, holy shit. And my girlfriend Micah was like, they're really laying it in. And I was thinking, well, that's how we taught them. That's how, at least Brian anyway, I guess Rory caught on, or Drew caught on, but that's how we taught them. Whether there's 5 people or 500, you got to go out there and perform,
Is there anything you want to promote before we let you go?
My wrestling school, Texas Wrestling Academy. If there's a lot of schools out there. There's very few that actually have trainers that with the experience, and I'm not really knocking anybody, but it has to be said. I mean, it's just based on what we talked about. We just talked about was just doing stuff the right way, and there's a lot of schools that a lot of trainers if you don't draw anybody, you suck, and that's not true. It's just if you don't draw anybody, you just got to work harder. And so if you want to learn how to do this stuff the right way and have a chance and be relevant and have come from a reputable school, Texas Wrestling Academy _SA is our email address. That's our Facebook page, Texas Wrestling Academy. And just say, hey, I want to be a wrestler, and I'll send you all the information you need. And even though we're in this coronavirus thing going on, I mean, we're doing some stuff to try and work around it, smaller groups. I'm starting another class. I'm starting a group June 1st, and it means dividing the groups into groups of 5, 6 or whatever. That's so be it. But yeah, I mean, Texas Wrestling Academy, that's the place where you want to go if you want to learn how to do the stuff correctly.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. This was great. I appreciate your time. You're a great storyteller. This was really good, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem. Anytime.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, Working Fans Wrestling _pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.